Bishop Schofield, Diocese of San Joaquin. Still Bishop of the Diocese of San Joaquin, despite many litigation papers to say otherwise. Let's do a little bit of review here. A couple years ago, you were the first diocese to exit TEC, and what's come about since then?
Well, it's very interesting, I must say. When we left with a bang, and over 90% of our priests and clergy voted to leave the Episcopal Church. Now, you wouldn't believe that nowadays if you read the newspapers, because the other side reports that I, with a handful of priests and parishes, have left. So it's an interesting twist on the truth. We still have a significant number of clergy and parishes, and indeed I gave our priests that period of time where they were able to discern whether they should stay with us or not. And it's very interesting because since that time began, no one has discerned that they should leave. And in fact, where there were one or two priests who were really exercised over this, one almost to the point of losing his mind, worked through it all, and just the other day said to a parishioner, "Oh, I'm so glad I made the decision to stay with the diocese." So we have a large number that have stayed with us. And what's equally exciting is, now that we have come through the founding of the new province, the old border lines no longer hold. We were going to respect, and we did respect, the authority of our Archbishop, Greg Venables, down in Argentina. He went way out on a limb for us, and as a result of that, he said, "Look, I'm way out on that limb. Don't cut it off," because we could easily have embarrassed him. But he put such trust in us, we felt we had that obedience due him. And so we never welcomed in other parishes. But we have parishes now lined up, excited and wanting to come into the diocese.
Yeah, I've been talking to a few priests that were here in my travels from San Diego into at least 500 miles square of your location that said, "We want to be San Joaquin."
Oh, my goodness. 500 miles is nothing because we have some that are looking at us way up in Idaho, way out in Montana, and somewhat further north and to the west, up beyond Seattle. So, yes, there are a great number. We also have parishes that are looking at us very seriously in Catherine Jefferts Shorey's old diocese. That is the Diocese of Nevada. And we have one for sure, but there may be more coming in to us.
Now, that's an interesting thing now that we have a new province. We're moving away from the old polity, but your diocese is still stuck in it because there's litigation going on as to tech still trying to reign control.
That's correct.
Now, they've over the last couple months made some legal missteps by...
Quite a few.
Quite a few,
as a matter of fact.
Can you let us...
Well, it's very interesting that somehow or other, the canon law somehow applies to us who have left, but they have absolutely ignored their own canon laws, have not been proceeding according to their own processes that they set up. So initially, before I was even deposed, Catherine Jefferts Shorey called for a meeting of a general or a diocesan convention in our diocese.
But she does not have the authority to do so.
Catherine Shorey, as presiding bishop, has no authority to do that. It's the position of the bishop to call for a meeting. And I had not been deposed. And as an inhibited bishop, which I was at that point, I still had legal authority to call business meetings. So that was an illegal meeting called in the first place. Then, when they gathered together, they didn't have a quorum. They were claiming to be the Diocese of San Joaquin. But if that were the case, then why did they only have such a small handful of priests who were there? And anyone who came to the meeting, they sort of deputized, as it were, to be a member of that meeting. However, none of them had been elected by their own parishes. None of the priests of the Diocese of San Joaquin, with one or two rare exceptions, even attended. So the whole meeting was a sham. And then it was Catherine who appointed Jerry Lamb. She took him out of retirement, former Bishop of Northern California, living in the Southwest, brought him back, and then announced to the world that he was the true Bishop of San Joaquin. Well, he isn't, and he has proceeded on. They published a newspaper, stole our mailing list. Try that one on for size. Then took our shield and seal and published a newspaper that mimicked ours. And of course, they poured a lot of money into it, so it was a glossy paper. And they started publishing facts that anyone who was on the ground, anyone who was part of the scene, could tell that this was not only an exaggeration, but an out-and-out lie. So the whole thing boomeranged against them, and they've stopped publishing these things.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
I also happen to notice that they legally cemented that they didn't have a quorum by sending out deposition letters to...
Absolutely, and they have deposed all sorts of people. But the interesting thing is the one or two that should be deposed, namely there was one deacon who went off to the Roman Catholic Church. Officially, she is still a deacon of the Episcopal Church, but she is submitted to Rome. And there are other sort of anomalies like that, which is sort of probably an indication that they just didn't have accurate information.
So what happens from here? I mean, certainly legally, even though everything's on your side and the facts are on your side and the law is on your side, you still have to deal with judges and...
Oh, we certainly do.
You know.
And we had an interesting moment a few months back. The Episcopal Church asked for what's called a summary judgment. Basically, and there's going to be some inaccuracies here, but basically what this is all about is if both sides agree on the facts, then what that means is that the judge can make the decision between the two sides. Don't need a jury trial. And we waited a long time. It was postponed time and time again. And finally the summary judgment came out, and it was against us. And our lawyers said, hello? Did you even read the documentation? Unfortunately, that had not happened. And some person working in the judge's office had obviously read the material and had made the decision for him. And once he saw this, he was the one quickly to withdraw his tentative judgment. And so we don't know what that judgment's going to be. It's now been put off. He has another 90 days from the time he made that decision. So I imagine it's down to about 65 days now. And if he's taken all this time to make that decision, that's an indication at least that it is so unclear that it really should go to a trial rather than a summary judgment.
Now, this isn't cheap to do.
No, it's not cheap to do. And, you know, we have had some angels, financial angels. I think that's what they call them on Broadway. And they have been sending us some money. And one man, a very, very fine businessman in the Diocese of Los Angeles, has followed our case, sent us money, and then the other day, more than the other day, about a month and a half ago, sent a letter saying, I know how expensive legal cases like this can be. So what I'm going to do is make an offer to you. And I was the recipient of one of two letters. The other recipient was Catherine Jefferts Shorey, presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. And he said, I will cover all expenses of the two of you coming to Los Angeles and meet in my office for mediation. I took this letter to our diocesan council, and in fact, the council said, go for it. Well, we've heard nothing. But we're not surprised, because in other cases where the Episcopal Church has entered into mediation, in fact, in one particular case up in Northern California, the judge worked through till late in the afternoon and was very discouraged. He came to our side, and said, I'm willing to work through to midnight if that's what it takes to come to some mediation point. At 9:30 at night, he called our people in and said, I have dealt with more than 3,000 cases. I have never seen anything like this in my life. They are not willing to give 1 inch. And he said, there is no mediation. I don't even know why they agreed to meet with you. Now, it was very interesting that the new bishop of Northern California, was not invited to participate. I suspect that they thought he might actually be generous. And so it was that the priest for whom we are rooting phoned him on his cell phone. And the bishop was quite surprised, because he wasn't expecting a telephone call from this priest. And he said, can we meet for coffee? And the bishop said, yes, because they'd both been old friends. And in fact, they had a relationship that honored and respected one another. And I have to say that about Barry Beisner. He really wants to do what is right. So they met, and despite what New York wanted to happen, they had an arrangement whereby they made life a little bit easier on our priest, which was a wonderful thing. So mediation doesn't seem to be in the cards, and we're hoping for a trial because basically we followed all the rules. We did what was legal by the rules of the Episcopal Church when I was an active Episcopal bishop. We followed everything down to the last letter of the law, and we left. Now, it's very interesting, isn't it, that there is no single written law anywhere in any of the Episcopal Church's canon law that says you can't leave. Now, that's really something.
Is it oversight?
I don't think that the Episcopal Church ever conceived that this day would come when anyone would want to leave. So that was never even put into canon law. And in fact, we've been very helped by some statements made by the Convention of the Diocese of South Carolina, one of the original dioceses of the forming church after the American Revolution in the late 18th century. And in it, the Bishop Mark Lawrence stated very clearly that South Carolina chose voluntarily to associate with the Episcopal Church and was willing to grant it certain powers, but wanted to make it clear that South Carolina retained authority over its own affairs. And indeed, when you check through history, this is exactly how the Episcopal Church was formed, and therefore it's a federation of autonomous dioceses. It is not a hierarchical church, as they are now trying to pretend it to be.
Well, it's a hierarchical church wannabe.
Yes, that's a good one.
At best. I mean, we find it was often set up the way our state constitutions were, where the state is the autonomous authority, the diocese was the autonomous authority, and
that which was not specifically stated in the federal laws automatically fell to state laws. Same thing is true in the Episcopal Church. So there is much going for us. But as one of our lawyers said, who has been practicing law for 34 years, you could have a solid case, but you still can't outguess what's going to happen.
There's always the OJ factor.
There is. There is.
Okay, so we're here. We have a brand new province in America.
And that's very exciting.
It's exciting, but also it's a temptation for tech churches now. There's an alternative.
Well, there is, but you know, it's very interesting. I'd like to take us back 10 or 15 years, because a number of us conservatives, well over a decade ago, went to the Episcopal Church and asked for the possibility of a 10th province, which would be non-geographic. And we were absolutely turned down.
Was this Frank Griswold?
Yes. Yeah. And I thought, just today, I thought to myself, had they granted that 10th province, there would be no split in the church today, very likely, and the Episcopal Church would still be in control of us. But they resolutely refused to do this, and so as a result of this, what happens? There was a split, and now, how exciting to think that there are 28 or 29 dioceses formed, and some in formation. 5 are in formation. But over the past few years, in direct response to the primates, that's the archbishops of the global south, Bishop Bob Duncan of Pittsburgh pulled together a lot of the splinter groups that cut themselves off from the Episcopal Church. And he pulled them together in such a remarkable way, honoring each one, recognizing that there were some serious theological and traditional differences between them, brought them together and created what he called the round table, or the common cause. And as a result of that, with those bishops coming on board and their people, do you realize that this new province, which includes Canada as well, has well over 100,000 people? This is no small thing as we've been presented. We've been presented as that fringe group of 4 little dioceses that really don't matter too much. 100,000 people across the United States and Canada are now one in the new Anglican Church in North America. Another thing I just have to share with you, which I think is a lot of fun, but many years ago, the Canadian bishops came down for the first time and met with us at St. James Newport Beach. And it was there that I had a little vision. I'm not talking a real vision now, just sort of a thought. And it was, I could see that Canada was so small in terms of its population that they wouldn't be able to stand on their own. So I suggested then, why don't we think about a province of North America? And then ultimately, we might have a province of Central America and South America, and then bring the whole group together and be known as the province of the Americas. Well, it's all beginning to happen. And at that time, it was just a little thought, but maybe it was a prophetic thought.
Sure. Well, yesterday we heard from Metropolitan Jonah.
Yes.
About the desire for all these different denominations to open up to us ecumenically.
Oh, and isn't that thrilling? I think a lot of people at the assembly this week did not realize the significance, number one, of who Metropolitan Jonah is, and secondly, what he offered. He made himself very vulnerable indeed. And he said, we are prepared to enter into dialogue with you. And our goal is not just mutual understanding. Our goal goes way beyond that. We want to be able to share communion with one another and also orders. That is very dramatic. He also made it very clear that his relationship with Anglicans in North America, and by the way, he is the metropolitan of all North America, so it covers the same territory as we do. He said, our relationship from the Orthodox side will be exclusively through the Anglican Church in North America. That is very big and very generous. And he did point out that there were some serious problems. However, they were open, and he said himself that the Orthodox were willing to learn from the Anglicans in the hope that the Anglicans were willing to learn from the Orthodox as well.
Yeah, that was an interesting, watching the people in the seats.
Yes.
There were times of very much excitement, and then there's times like, oh, we have a lot to overcome.
That's right.
And that there are big differences between us and Orthodoxy and us and other Roman Catholics and stuff like that.
There was one thing that I think is very interesting and I think somewhat hopeful. And that was when he was asked specifically about women's ordination. Because as you know, the Orthodox Church do not ordain women.
In any manner, shape, or form.
Well, yes, to deacons, priests, or bishops. Now, the new province has stated very clearly it will not ordain women to the episcopate, because that puts the cat among the pigeons, as it were, and it calls into question all the ordinations that woman would do. However, what he did say was there is an ancient tradition within the Orthodox churches, and that wasn't just the Russian Orthodox Church, where women have had powerful and effective ministries. And they've had many deaconesses, and we, of course, in the Episcopal Church used to have deaconesses as well. There was a school for deaconesses, St. Margaret's School, right in Berkeley, California. But he said, we really need to know, as Orthodox people, that women have a very important role, and especially in reaching out to other women in a ministry situation. So I was very encouraged by that.
I was too. His exact quote was, we need to decide the issue. He didn't say we need to stop.
That's right.
He says the issue needs to be decided.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And later at lunch, he was asked, he said, one of the bishops, Anglican bishops there, asked him, you mentioned only two orders, priests and bishops. What about deacons? And that's where he spoke about deaconesses and the importance and richness of women in ministry, and that perhaps there would be some learning from both sides.
Wow.
That is exciting.
It is. So, 5 years from now, Diocese of San Joaquin, what do you see there? This is the final question.
Oh, okay, let's see how I can cram as much into this final question as possible.
Then I promise to turn the AC back on.
Okay. Yes, it is warm here in Texas.
Yes.
Where do I see us 5 years from now? Well, one of the things that is very exciting with this new province is that this is a window of opportunity. And so the Diocese of San Joaquin, traditional that we may be, is willing to entertain, be open to different forms of ministry. We're particularly interested in this ministry that was presented this morning from, his name was Hunter?
Ted Hunter. Yeah.
Yes, and where he is going to plant 200 churches on the West Coast in the next few years. And we're really interested in that. And we are also finding that we have, as I've told you earlier in the interview, a number of churches wanting to join into the diocese. Now, one of the things that is a possibility for us is that it would become unwieldy if I had a parish in Miles City, Montana, which, by the way, you arrive at by flying to San Francisco, Salt Lake City, backtrack to Billings, Montana, and then 4.5 hours drive up the state of Montana. That's a bit unwieldy for one diocese. And so we're looking at all sorts of possibilities. Do we want to have suffragan bishops? Do we want to divide the diocese? How are we going to handle this? And I don't want to prevent any creativity from happening. I want to be completely open. I'm excited about the possibility for the future ministry of the diocese. And the wonderful thing is that despite the fact that the Episcopal Church has unilaterally frozen all of our assets, we are still functioning, fully functioning in the diocese some almost 2 years later. And what's going to happen is that we have a flood of new churches coming in, over which they have no control. And I see the diocese growing, but we don't want it to be growing out of control. We want it to be an orderly thing as much as possible. After all, we are Anglicans. and I think it's really important that we look for quality of ministry. And you cannot have good quality of ministry when you only see your bishop, who is more than 1,000 miles away from you, and you only see him once every year and a half or 2 years or 3 years. So that's out, that's for sure. But how do we deal with it? We're open for the leading and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And the thing that is so exciting, so wonderful, is that we are on the growing edge. The curve is going in our direction now. People want to become part of this. People want to be free. And people are tired of the legalistic oppression that we have lived under for so long. And now, with simplicity of law, with trust in one another, and good support for one another from varying points of view, this is very welcoming, very open, very refreshing, and very winsome. And so, as a matter of fact, we're seeing people wanting to become part of us. I'm going to end with this. Just one little story we heard this morning.
Sure.
And it was our new Archbishop, Robert Duncan, who told the story. He said, at the reception following his enthronement last night at Christ Church Plano, a family was very thrilled, very excited, and the news reached him this morning that this family that lives some distance here from Plano, Texas, has already determined they're going to start a new church. Now, it's that kind of excitement, it's that kind of evangelism that catches fire. And I am absolutely convinced that's what happened in the early church. How is it possible that the early church, within 30 years of the resurrection of Jesus, already had Christians in the household of Caesar in Rome? And think of it, they did it all without any Xerox machines, internet. They didn't have any cell phones. They had none of that. What did they have? They had personal experience of being transformed by the love of Christ. And people could see that. They also experienced miracles. People were being healed. And when you see people's lives, that people that you know personally who are totally changed, and you think, this is real, I want in on this. And that's exactly what we're experiencing now. And I praise God for it. I wouldn't want to be alive at any other time.